But as you watch this legislation voted in today and the debate about what's going to happen to it, it also highlights an essential question about how democracy functions, how legislation is made, and fundamentally what we want our political representatives to do. Essentially want them to evaluate arguments and assess costs and benefits, listen to different interests and constituents, and ultimately make good faith judgments about what they think is best for the country and for the people they represent. What we don't want our representatives doing is what happens too much in Washington, frankly, which is siding with the folks who write the biggest checks. And that is particularly true if the politician in question is in desperate financial straits and willing to do anything, including selling off their own political platform to any person willing to pony up the most cash. Which brings us to the most prominent Republican opponent of today's bill, one Donald Trump. Now, the ex-president, we should note, is a bit of a late convert to the pro-TikTok cause. Here he is, as president 4 years ago, threatening to ban the app outright.
We're looking at TikTok. We may be banning TikTok. We may be doing some other things. There are a couple of options, but a lot of things are happening. So we'll see what happens. But we are looking at a lot of alternatives with respect to TikTok.
In fact, Trump tried to go through with that ban, although ultimately it fell apart. It was thrown out by the courts. But here he is 2 days ago, in the run-up to this vote, 2 days ago, on CNBC announcing opposing a ban.
Frankly, there are a lot of people on TikTok that love it. There are a lot of young kids on TikTok who will go crazy without it. There are a lot of users. There's a lot of good, and there's a lot of bad with TikTok. But the thing I don't like is that without TikTok, you can make Facebook bigger, and I consider Facebook to be an enemy of the people.
Right. You may remember Facebook banned him. Trump has a vendetta against Mark Zuckerberg, who he calls Zucker Schmuck. So the TikTok flip-flop that you just saw from Trump, it didn't come out of nowhere. It wasn't like he was sitting there like, oh, let's look at the pros and cons articles. Someone get this all together to me. No, get this. It was just like 2 weeks ago when this vote was scheduled. Everyone knew it was going to happen. That a Republican mega donor, that guy named Jeff Yass, made the pilgrimage down to Mar-a-Lago to kiss Trump's ring. And it was particularly notable because Yass has previously been something of a Trump skeptic. It's also notable because Yass co-founded a trading firm that owns 15% of TikTok's parent company and reportedly has a personal stake in the company worth tens of billions of dollars. Jeff Yass, who's an enormous Republican donor, the leading donor in 2024 so far, has a lot riding on this decision. Okay? Well, you don't have to be a genius to put two and two together here. Yass visits, Trump announces he now opposes the ban. In fact, even Steve Bannon figured it out, taking to a fringe right-wing social platform to share an article about Trump's flip-flop with the caption, quote, simply, Yass coin. And thanks to Mitch McConnell and the John Roberts Supreme Court, we effectively have no real, actual, meaningful campaign finance regulations left in this country, which means that someone like Jeff Yass, again, who has like billions of dollars on the line, can write $1 billion check to Donald Trump's super PAC if he's so inclined. Might get good return on that investment. So it should come as no surprise that the ex-president left that meeting with Yass with a newfound appreciation for TikTok. And here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen, this is not a one-off. I am telling you right now, this is now the way policy is going to get formed in this campaign and in a possible second Trump term, especially when the man is in acute financial distress and does not have the liquidity to pony up the $600 million he owes in legal penalties. He is also way behind in fundraising, partly because he and his operation have already cannibalized huge amounts of small dollar donations already in order to pay off tens of millions of dollars in legal fees. Legal fees, I should add, that aren't going anywhere and are probably going to get worse. A core part of Trump's appeal back in 2016 was this lie. It was a shtick that his personal wealth, I'm a big billionaire, would allow him to self-fund his campaign and make him immune to outside influence.
Hillary Clinton's campaign is funded by Wall Street and hedge fund managers. My campaign is powered by my money. I'm self-funding. So I'm not controlled by all these people that control Cruz, that control Hillary, crooked Hillary.
I have
tens and tens of millions of dollars. Nobody else does. I put my own money into this.
Okay, that was always a lie. He raised huge sums of money from donors in that campaign. But right now, he is more beholden to donors and the donor class than ever before. He owes hundreds of millions of dollars. The small donations that they've been just cranking, right, are showing signs of running dry. There's only so many $10 donations you can get out of people. And so, name your price, billionaires. Donald Trump's political positions are for sale. We've seen it with TikTok and his flip-flopping on cutting things like Medicare and Social Security, another unpopular position he once opposed but now seems open to because, again, it is what extremely wealthy donors want to see. The ex-president is strapped for cash, and the Republican platform and America's governing agenda, perhaps, is up for auction to the highest bidder. As we reported here, Donald Trump and Joe Biden became the presumptive nominees of their parties for president last night. As I've said many times, they both have records to run on, which I guess is why Trump allies keep asking this question.
And people look around and they say, am I better off now than I was 4 years ago? The answer to that is no. You can compare very easily how much better your life was with Donald Trump in office and how much worse you are now that Joe Biden is in office.
They just keep trying to squeeze out a little more juice from that old Ronald Reagan campaign slogan, hoping that we've all wiped 2020 from our minds completely. But you know what? It is a good question. And if Republicans are going to keep asking it, I think we should keep trying to answer it. So, how good was your life 4 years ago today, on March 13th, 2020? On that day, Donald Trump held a 72-minute-long press conference in the Rose Garden to address the coronavirus. And so I want to show you what that press conference looked like in relation to the actual facts of what was being reported on that very day.
Breaking news tonight, President Trump declaring the coronavirus a national emergency.
A national emergency. Two very big words.
The number of cases in the U.S. rising to near 2,000, at least 41 deaths, all schools closing in a growing number of states, millions of students impacted, houses of worship suspending services, landmarks, theme parks, sporting events, and concerts shutting down.
We don't want people to take a test if we feel that they shouldn't be doing it. 1.4 million tests on board next week, and 5 million within a month. I doubt we'll need anywhere near that.
The testing crisis, drive-through stations overflowing, President Trump vowing to boost testing and saying he takes no responsibility for widespread delays.
Dr. Fauci said earlier this week that the lag in testing was, in fact, a failing. Do you take responsibility for that?
Yeah, no, I don't take responsibility at all.
The chaos at grocery store lines where they stretch out the door, shelves cleared out.
At this New York grocery store, customers stood for 2 hours to check out. Aisles usually chock full of toilet paper, paper towels, cold medicine, even pasta, now lay bare with nothing left.
I showed up today and it's just chaos.
These guys are selling a lot of toilet paper. I don't know. There seems to, Tony, do you need to give some guidance that toilet paper is not an effective protection against getting the coronavirus?
Hospitals bracing for a possible surge in patients, already reporting shortages of masks and protective clothing. Will there be enough beds?
You said that you don't take responsibility, but you did disband the White House Pandemic Office. The officials that worked in that office said that the White House lost valuable time because that office wasn't disbanded. What do you make of that?
Well, I just think it's a nasty question. Some of the doctors say it will wash through, it will flow through, in interesting terms, and very accurate. I think you're going to find in a number of weeks it's going to be a very accurate term.
Nervous, scared, confused, not really sure what's going on.
Or worse, it could get worse.
That, just to be clear, that all happened on the same day. We didn't, stitch together a week of footage. That was March 13th, 2020. One day. So how about it? You better off than you were 4 years ago? Exactly 4 years ago? I'll leave that for you to decide. This morning it was reported that the Republican Senate retreat would feature a very high-profile keynote speaker, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. At the last minute, he canceled. He was replaced with Israeli ambassador to the U.S., Michael Herzog. Netanyahu makes no secret about his preference for Republicans in U.S. politics. recently has been in conflict with President Joe Biden over the aims of Israel's continuing war in Gaza as the situation on the ground gets more dire by the day, with more than 30,000 Palestinians already dead, nearly 2 million internally displaced, and according to multiple NGOs, hundreds of thousands right now at risk of starvation across the territory. Last week, after a State of the Union address, Biden was caught on a hot mic, essentially saying that things are going to change for Netanyahu.
I told him, baby, let me get this. I said, baby, you know I should come and change. Sure, just I'm a hot mic. Good. That was good.
Don't repeat this. I'm on a hot mic. Much of that frustration centers around calls for a ceasefire, the desire to prevent an Israeli incursion into the city of Rafah. That's sort of the last place where people have sought refuge. There's 1.4 million Palestinians now there in tents, like you see. So just days later, after the State of the Union, Netanyahu insisted that that offensive, which the Biden administration opposes, will go forward. Now a group of Democratic senators have sent a letter to the administration urging conditions on any arms shipments to Israel, saying, quote, the United States should not provide military assistance to any country that interferes with U.S. humanitarian assistance. I'm joined now by the lead signatory of that letter, Independent Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont. Senator, what is your aim here with this letter?
Chris, my aim is to make it clear that Israel is breaking the law. This is not debatable. Section 6201 of the Foreign Policy Act, Foreign Assistance Act, makes it clear that any country that interferes with the provision of U.S. humanitarian aid will not get funding from the United States of America. And that's clearly what Israel is doing. What is going on, as you've just indicated, and I hope everybody understands it, is unprecedented. It is unspeakable. And it's not just tens of thousands of people have been killed and wounded. At this moment, Chris, as we speak, hundreds of thousands of children are facing starvation. And the reason for that is that Netanyahu's right-wing government is blocking the borders and preventing the massive amount of aid that needs to get through from getting through. And people are dying as a result. That is in violation of American law. We should stop funding Netanyahu's war machine.
I should say here that the Israeli government, and particularly the unity government that is running the war since the attack by Hamas on October 7th, they say they're not blocking aid. They say that they're blocking dual-use goods, that they're letting aid through, that it's the fault of the aid groups or the U.S. or others. You do not seem swayed by that contention.
No, not at all. Everybody knows what's going on. Several senators, Senator Van Hollen, Senator Merkley, were there at the border. What they're doing is doing these checks, which take hours and hours and hours, and slowing up the ability of trucks to get through. Everybody knows that that's the case. And that's got to change. We cannot, as a nation, be complicit in the starvation of human beings and of children.
There's an urgent humanitarian issue here, which is the fact that, again, the UN World Food Program, Cindy McCain, I mean, people that don't have a particular political dog in the fight saying, look, this is an emergency situation of mass starvation. There's also a political ramification in domestic politics, and just the fact that it just seems clear increasingly that the politics for Joe Biden are basically the opposite of the politics for Prime Minister Netanyahu, that the longer the war goes, in some ways, the more that he's spared from the possibility of calls for new elections, his coalition falling apart, whereas the longer this goes, the worse it is for the Democratic coalition, which is extremely torn apart on this issue.
Absolutely. And I would argue, Chris, it's not just the Democratic base and young people who are very, very distraught by what's going on, as they should be. It is people all across the board. Yeah. If you're a conservative Republican, you do not want America to be complicit in the starvation of children. And bottom line is the law is being broken. The law has got to be enforced. And if Israel does not open those borders and allow the thousands of trucks that are needed to feed desperate people in, funding for the Israeli war machine should stop.
You have a new proposal this week that I just saw today, which I've actually been thinking about because I've just been doing some research on the movement that pushed for the 40-hour work week or the 8-hour work day for a book I'm writing. And the legislation would move past that to a 32-hour work week with no loss of pay, that it's not a radical idea. It's time for working people to benefit from advancements in AI, automation, new technology, not just corporate CEOs and wealthy stockholders on Wall Street. How would legislation like that work, actually?
Well, for a start, the 40-hour week, as I recall, was established in 1940. All right, that is 84 years ago. There have been a few modest changes in the economy over the last 84 years. And what's gone on is workers today are far more productive. I mean, think about all of the technology and equipment that's out there today. So the question that we're going to be asking tomorrow is who benefits from all of the changes that have taken place in the economy, the new technology, and, by the way, the artificial intelligence and robotics that's sitting around the corner that is going to transform the entire economy. Most people, if you got a job today, it's going to be very different 10, 15 years ago from today if you have that job. So what we are saying is with all of this new technology and an increase in worker productivity, workers should benefit from these changes, not just large corporations and the stockholders.
All right, Senator Bernie Sanders, as always, pleasure. Sir, thank you for joining.